Welcome to World Talk Brief. Today we're diving into a really big debate that's heating up in cities all over the world: rent control.
You know, it really all starts with people. Take this quote from Chloe Bryceland, a 23-year-old renter in Scotland. Her words get right to the heart of it, don't they? This is the human side of the housing crisis, where rents are climbing so fast that people are being pushed to their absolute financial limits.
And Chloe's struggle? Well, it's definitely not unique. It's part of a much bigger national picture. I mean, just look at the average private rent in the UK at the end of 2023. £1,368 a month. That's a 4% jump in just 1 year. And for a lot of people, their paychecks are just not going up that fast.
Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll dig into this crisis of affordability. Then we'll get clear on what rent controls actually are. After that, we'll look at two big case studies: Berlin versus Paris. Then we'll see what's happening with the UK's new rules. And finally, we'll talk about the balancing act at the center of this whole debate.
So let's start with part one, a crisis of affordability. We need to understand exactly why this old idea is making such a major comeback right now.
Let's circle back to Chloe's story, because it really paints a picture. Right now, she has a 4-hour round-trip commute every single day. Can you imagine? And when she moves closer to her job, she's expecting her rent to swallow up 60% of her income. 60%! And this is happening all over. In Glasgow, rents are up almost 6% in a year. In London, the average is a massive £2,268 a month. The story is the same. Rents are just skyrocketing. And because of all this pressure, you're seeing political leaders step up. In places like London and Greater Manchester, mayors are now calling for the power to actually cap these rent increases. An idea that used to be kind of on the fringes is now front and center in the political conversation.
Okay, so that leads us to the big question. What exactly are rent controls? It's an idea that's been around for, believe it or not, something like 2,000 years, but it's got a very modern twist.
Basically, rent control is a government policy that limits how much a landlord can charge for rent or how much they can increase it. It's a price cap. But, and this is a really big but, the debate isn't just about the idea itself, it's all about how it's done. The details are everything.
And this is where things get really interesting, because not all rent controls are the same. You've basically got two kinds. First generation is like a hard cap. It's a strict rent freeze, setting a maximum price. Think of what Berlin tried in 2020. Then you've got second generation, which is more like rent stabilization. It doesn't freeze the rent, but it limits how fast it can go up, often tying it to inflation. This is the model that Scotland is looking at, and it's a really crucial difference.
And like I said, this idea is not new. Not at all. We're talking ancient Rome, where there's evidence of rents being frozen for a year. It's a policy that tends to pop up whenever there's a big housing shortage or economic stress. We saw it in the UK during World War I, then during World War II, over 100 countries had some form of it. And now, well, here we are again, with affordability crises in cities all over the world, and the debate is back.
So, to really understand the impact of these policies, let's look at a couple of real-world examples. We're going to compare Berlin and Paris, two big cities with two very different stories. First up, Berlin. This is what you might call a cautionary tale. In 2020, they went for a really strict rent freeze. It was a bold move, but it only lasted about a year before a court overturned it. Still, that 1 year gives us a ton of data to look at.
And what happened? Well, a study from a German research institute found that the number of rental ads online just plummeted. The weekly median went from around 640 ads before the policy down to just over 220 after. It's a classic case of what economists worry about. If you cap the price, you can shrink the supply.
And the study also found that at the same time, there was a 51% increase in apartments being converted from rentals to places for sale. So it seems like a lot of landlords just decided, hey, if I can't rent this out for a profit, I'll just sell it instead. And that, of course, shrinks the rental market even more.
Okay, but now let's look at Paris, which took a totally different approach. This is the alternative story. Instead of a hard freeze, they went with a more flexible system. They set prices based on the square meter, and if landlords charge too much, they face penalties.
So what happened there? Well, a study found that average rents in Paris actually dropped by about 3 or 4%. And here's the really important part. Unlike in Berlin, there was no evidence that the rental supply shrank. So it looks like this more moderate approach managed to lower rent without scaring landlords out of the market.
All right, so that brings us back to the UK, and specifically to Scotland, which is trying to learn from these other cities and chart its own path.
So here's the plan in Scotland, which is set to take effect in 2027. It's a second-generation system, so it's more flexible. Local councils will get the power to cap rent increases. The limit is basically inflation plus 1% up to a max of 6%. And here's a really key detail. This cap applies during a tenancy and also between tenancies. The whole point of that is to stop landlords from kicking someone out just so they can jack up the price for the next person.
But of course, not everyone is happy. Landlord groups are pretty worried. John Blackwood of the Scottish Association of Landlords put it plainly, it might become no longer financially viable to let properties in Scotland. They're making that classic argument that even this flexible system will just cause landlords to leave the market.
And then on the other side, you have tenants unions, like Living Rent. Their spokesperson says the proposals have been watered down and create a two-tier system. They think it doesn't go far enough and leaves too many loopholes. It just goes to show how incredibly tough it is to find a solution that works for everyone.
And this exact same push and pull is happening in England. You've got someone like Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, saying, look, if you're serious about the cost of living crisis, you have to look at this. But then you have politicians like James Cleverly arguing the exact opposite. Landlords are already leaving the market, and this would just make it worse. It's a fundamental disagreement.
So, all of this brings us to the final and maybe most important part, the balancing act. This is all about trying to find a solution that actually works.
Because at the end of the day, this isn't a simple case of right versus wrong. It's a series of really tough trade-offs. You want to protect tenants from crazy rent hikes right now, but you also have to make sure landlords have a reason to invest in their properties and keep them in good shape. And you've got to maintain a big enough supply of rental homes for people in the future. It's a puzzle. And almost everyone agrees that while rent controls might be a short-term fix, the only real long-term solution is to just build more housing.
And really, the whole global debate boils down to this one question from Professor Ingrid Gould-Ellen at NYU. She asks, how do you protect tenants at the same time that you ensure the long-run financial stability and viability and sustainability of these buildings? It's the central challenge, and cities all over the world are still searching for that perfect answer. Subscribe to World Talk Brief for more clear, thoughtful explanations. World Talk Brief, news explained without the noise.